Have you heard of a medical doctor refusing to treat a patient right unless he is thanked? Or a police officer pulling a car over for no good reason and refusing to let the driver go until he is compensated for spending his time on that car, on that driver? Or an official speeding up passport issuance in return for a plastic bag full of bottles of booze? Or a government official willing to put his approval for an infrastructure contract in return for sending his family and himself to a carnival in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil? You haven't heard of that? Well, I have. Because all those stories have happened to me in real life in Russia. And this is what I'll be talking about today. Real life, day-to-day corruption stories, cases that I have experienced in Russia. Howdy, howdy, friends. My name is Konstantin. Welcome to Inside Russia, where usual Russia is explained by the unusual Russian. As usual, you will not find BS, lies, or propaganda here. Instead, you will find truth, common sense, and logic, and some emotions too, because I'm a human being after all. And you will find lots of real life stories, and they're going to be interesting. Before I start, I'm asking you to hit the like button in advance. Please like it. It helps the channel a lot and does wonders for promoting this live stream. So, you will find Russia is a very corrupted country. That's a fact. In the Corruption Perception Index, yes, it does exist. It's published annually by the Transparency International. Russia ranks 141st place out of 180 countries for, ranked that for 2024. And that's pretty bad. It's somewhere at the end. It's among the countries with most corruption in the world, most corrupted countries in the world. Now, before getting into the stories and real cases, I would like to think a little bit and talk about why Russia is so corrupt. What differentiates Russians from other people? Believe it or not, but corruption is in blood of Russian people. Even in the 15th century, a few hundred years ago, Russian officials were taking bribes. Before the advent of full-fledged institution of public service, receiving money and food from the governed was a natural means of ensuring the activities of officials. Before Peter the Great reforms, government officials lived by feeding, meaning that is on funds received from persons interested in their services and activities. The concept of corruption is evidenced by many sayings and proverbs about bribes and bribe takers. For example, and I'll try to translate Russian proverbs into English as precisely as possible. So, не подмажешь, не поедешь. If you don't grease it, you won't go far. Суд прямой, да судья кривой. The court is straight, but the judge is crooked. Судьям то и полезло, что в карман, судьям то и полезно, что в карман полезло. It's useful for judges that fits their pockets. Всяк подьячий любит калач горячий. Everyone loves a hot roll. Не ходи в суд с одним носом, а ходи с приносом. Don't go to court empty-handed, but go with your hands full. Земля любит навоз, лошадь овес, а судья принос. The earth loves manure, the horse loves oats, and the judge loves a bribe. Перед Богом с правдой, пред судьей с деньгами. Stand before God with the truth, but stand before judge with money. Now, these proverbs are found are 400 years old. We in Russian language don't even use some of those words. Подьячий, принос, but the proverbs still live. That is the evidence that corruption existed in Russia a long time ago. That is the evidence on top of other evidence, written evidence and the stories. So you can't really cheat proverbs. Under Peter the Great, the state, having built a complex clerical apparatus with a large number of officials, didn't have enough funds to maintain it. Without receiving salaries, which were often delayed or not paid at all due to constant wars that Peter the Great was waging, many officials, especially at the lower classes, were poor. So bribes were often the only way for them to survive. And Peter the Great didn't punish the officials for taking bribes. He looked the other way, usually. So Russian Empire was corrupted. The USSR was corrupted. Russia, the modern Russia, is corrupted. Current president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, said so many times before he started the war on Ukraine that the problem number one in Russia was corruption. You know, he said that many times before the West turned out to be the enemy, and Russia was all of a sudden was surrounded by the enemies. You know, he said that the biggest problem of Russia was corruption when the West was the friend, when the United States was a partner and a friend, when Putin traveled to Maine and spent there a couple days, and to Texas and spent there a couple days, and he was absolutely in love with America. Dmitry Medvedev went to America numerous, at least once. He stopped by the Apple office, and then he was presented an iPhone and all of wonderful things that happen in America with them before all of a sudden the West turned evil and satanic and no good and the enemy. You know, of course, now Russia's problem number one is the enemies around who want to destroy Russia. But before it was the corruption inside Russia, in the Russian people, okay? So the governments change over centuries, but the people stay the same. Corruption is closely tied with power in Russia. The vertical of power has existed in Russia since Ivan the Terrible. He is the one who built the original vertical of power, Oprichnina. So the vertical of power is the governance system where power is centralized and belongs to a czar. He holds absolute power. And he has a legion of servants of different kind who maintain status quo, guard czar's absolute power. That's their only purpose. Such servants also enjoy a great deal of power and can legally use violence against regular people. They follow orders given from the very top. No matter what the orders are, they must execute the orders. In return, they are allowed to use power in places of the services on the ground, so to speak, to enrich themselves. For example, a state prosecutor. For example, there's a order comes from Moscow to a state prosecutor in a province to prosecute a certain oppositioner who is a potential threat to Tsar's power, who is becoming popular with people, who is gaining popularity. And the prosecutor, fabricates a case and puts that person in prison. threat is eliminated. But then at the same time, the prosecutor can fabricate cases against local businessmen and steal their businesses, enrich himself, his friends, people connected to him, or sell his ability to prosecute people to local businessmen who want to go after their competitors and put them to prison. Another example, a traffic police officer. He takes orders from the top to maintain status quo of the powers. In return, he can take bribes when someone violates traffic rules. And, his authorities, they just close eyes for that. It is all of that is unofficial, of course. It is kind of unspoken contract. But everyone understands it, and everyone lives by it. The salaries of officials are usually minuscule. For example, a policeman in Moscow earns an average salary of $600 per month, $100 per week. A federal judge earns anywhere from $1,400 to $2,500 per month, depending on her rank and experience. At the same time, these people hold tremendous amount of power in their hands, power to change and influence people's lives. I'd say they are very tempted. And these people, they all want to live well. They want good lives for themselves and for their families. And these people know that if they use their power for personal gain, they will not get punished, even if they get caught red-handed. In very rare cases, officials get prosecuted. They're usually just fired. And on top of that, that is morally acceptable in Russia, in Russian society, to use the position, your job, your seat, your power for personal gain. It has been morally acceptable for centuries. And that is the formula for the corruption in Russia at all levels in the society. Now, before jumping to the real life cases, I'd like to say something. Friends, I'd like to use this opportunity to say once more, thank you very much for your support. Thank you for the time when I did not live stream or made videos. I was sick for a month with Bell's palsy. You kept on watching Inside Russia. You kept on writing me. You didn't forget about me. You didn't give up on me. Thank you so very much. Thank you for all your support, for all your love, all your prayers, all your coffees at buymeacoffee.com. I got remonetized yesterday, thank goodness. Thank you for Patreon. Thank you for PayPal. Thank you so much for everything. I feel so much love. It's just making my life so much better. Thank you. Now, I would like to jump into real life cases. How does corruption look like in real life in Russia? I will tell you real cases that happened over the years to me, or happened to people that I personally know. I'll start with the USSR. The USSR was corrupted, same as Russia. Like I said, the governments change, people don't. They stay the same. So I'll start with probably the most dramatic and the most unpleasant case I've ever heard in my family with my grandfather. He was a tailor. My granddad made fantastic suits. After the war, and he was drafted, and he spent 4.5 years, World War II. He went all the way to Berlin and he participated in the Battle of Berlin. So he came back and he started sewing clothing. And he worked for a local, office, or I don't know, atelier. It was like a place where you had to sew clothing, make clothing for, government's orders, so to speak, a state-planned economy. But at nights, he took private orders. And then one person came to him and ordered a suit. And he started, he took the money and he started making a suit. And all of a sudden, he was arrested, detained, I should say. He was detained and interrogated, and basically a state prosecutor, well, a KGB officer came and said that my grandfather was done. He was doing business illegally, and that's like 10 years of prison back in late 40s. And my grandfather had 5 children. He had lots of people dependent on him. He got scared to death. They held him for some time at the station. Well, it wasn't the station, it was a KGB office. I believe it was in the city of Azov. And then a couple more officers showed up, and he said, well, you know what? We see that you're a very good man. Honest, we see that you just made a mistake. And we would like to fix that mistake. We would like to let you go. But in return, you will have to make us good suits, all 4 of us. And you will buy wool at your own expense, and it's not going to cost us a penny. But for that, we'll let you go. And of course, my grandfather was happy to get out, and he made 4 excellent suits for those men. And he never took private orders after that. The family was very poor, and he had fantastic skill. And I think he gave up on making clothes after that case. He went to work at the fields, at the collective farm. He told me that story, and it's pretty dramatic and it's pretty bad. Okay, story number 2, case number 2. My uncle's, my dad's brother, in the 60s, he was a taxi driver. Becoming a cabbie back then was like winning a lottery. It was a highly desirable job because cabbies made lots of money. The deal was a cabbie had to earn a certain amount of money. It was called a plan. A cabbie had to make a plan, basically a sales plan, every day. And he would have to bring cash to the government and said, okay. And then in return, he would get salary. But in reality, cabbies always made more. It's just whatever they made on top of the plan, above the plan, they kept it for themselves, put it into their own pockets. And back then, cabbies were making 10 times of what workers were making at the factories. Well, my uncle told me stories. He said that every single time that a cop saw a taxi cab, traffic cop, would stop taxi cab and extorted money from a driver. And the cabbies just gave a cop, every cop, 1 ruble per stop. Just so you understand, in the 60s, a worker working a very hard labor at the factory earned from 60 to 80 rubles per month, okay? So a cops would stop taxi cabs, and the drivers, they wouldn't even check registration, license, anything like that. My uncle said he always had a 1 ruble bill ready, and he would just, hand that to a cop, and the cop wouldn't check anything, he'd just let him go. So, another case, my cousin, back in 80s, he was a very rich man. He was a part of illegal manufacturing operation. He was what was called back then цеховик. Basically, there was a group of people who got together and they were making knockoffs of Adidas tennis shoes, sneakers. They were running a business. Only it was illegal back then. And my cousin was making a lot of money, and he bought himself a car. He got into an accident. He was drunk. He drank a lot back then. But he did not drive drunk. Instead, he gave the driver's seat to his friend who was sober. And friend, an inexperienced driver, crashed the car. He got into an accident. He collided with a large truck. And my cousin got hurt a lot. He was near death. The doctors saved him. And basically, his friend ran away. He was responsible for the accident. It was his fault. But he ran away. My cousin did not give up his friend. He did not tell the cops that he was... the thing is, the cops found my cousin in the passenger seat, okay? And he was unconscious, right? Unconscious. Anyway, so, but there was a investigation about him, not criminal, but administrative misdemeanor because he was drunk. And they were charging him with drunk driving, getting into an accident, and the judge was going to sentence him, but my cousin just bribed the judge. He gave him 2,000 rubles. Again, at the time, average salary of a worker, factory worker was about 120 rubles, more than in the 60s, but still not that much. And the judge ruled into my cousin's favor. Now, when my mom and my aunt heard that, they didn't believe. And I think that up to this day, they don't believe that it happened. Okay, but I believe. My cousin doesn't lie. And that's how it was done in the USSR. Then the very same cousin was telling me stories about their businesses. The business was strictly legal. And he said they never had problem with mafia. And in the 80s, mafia already existed in the USSR. He said that they were pretty tough. They owned guns back then, of course, illegally. And they basically, the mafia knew that they could answer threats, so to speak. So they were powerful. And they had their own bodyguards and security service and so forth, But they couldn't do much about the KGB. KGB, of course, knew about them, and the local cops knew, but the local cops were pushed aside by the KGB. And once a month, a person from the KGB came, and he took a bribe. And the bribe was a TV set and a VCR. And back then, the TV set and a VCR together cost 10,000 rubles, like a car. Again, an average worker at the factory received 120 rubles every single month. And every single month, KGB people received 10,000 rubles worth a TV set made in Japan and a VCR made in Japan. It was not negotiable, said the цеховики. They didn't want any troubles. They were happy to pay. And they did what KGB told them to do. Another case. My father, he was never a businessman. He loved train engines. He was a train engine foreman, how would I say? He was in charge of train engines at a large combine harvester factory in Rostov. Yet, he tried to make money once. Me and mom traveled to Moscow back in 1988, and then from Moscow we traveled to Lithuania, in the city Klaipėda. And that was a port city in the USSR, well, still is. And they had things that we didn't have in Russia, in Rostov-on-Don. So in Moscow and in Klaipėda, we bought lots of clothing, overcoat, for mom, for me, overcoat for sale. Mom got lots of cosmetics. I got football. I remember we had like a suitcase full of stuff. And then we came back, and my dad decided to sell. There was a local place, like a flea market, where people sold their stuff. And my father was like, well, you could spot him among all those people selling things professionally, because it was his first time. And of course, the KGB knew that he was novice. He showed up for the first time, and they detained him. I remember that case. I was with my dad. Okay, well, I was around, and he was scared to death, just like my grandfather. So they detained him, and basically they couldn't charge him really with the crime, because at the time it was late 1988. People could sell, they could do business already. But my father, he was very scared, and basically on the spot he was offered a deal. They said, "Give us half of your stuff, we'll let you go," and he did. So we turned out losing a lot of money, because he just gave half of the stuff, like an overcoat made in Finland, shoes, tennis shoes, I think American tennis shoes. It was that stuff cost lots of money back then. My father was so scared, he never touched business again in his life. He got vaccinated against business. I, on the other hand, sold the football. I paid 25. Well, mom paid 25 rubles for it. I sold it for 45. I remember I sold sunglasses. We paid 12. I sold it for 20 something, 25 or 28. And I sold bubble gum. Believe it or not, we didn't have bubble gum, so I bought it in Klaipeda and I sold it twice as much in Rostov, and I loved it. I was 12 years old, and it was my first commercial experience. Konstantin was born on that day, let me tell you. But anyway, so that's the case with my father. KGB really bunch of no good bums. Now, that was in the USSR. Now let's move to Russia. In Russia, everything in the 90s at least, everything was for sale. Wasn't even considered corruption, it was just the way of life. Case number one. There was a case once with, I call it the passport case. Back in 1997, I came from America for a week to Rostov to briefly see my parents and receive American visa, student visa. The problem was my passport was about to expire, foreign passport, foreign travel passport, my document. And in Russia, there was a rule, you could only get it where you were registered. And I was registered in Rostov-on-Don, in my parents' apartment. So I traveled to Rostov, I saw my family, and I came to a local passport office. And the lady looked at me and she said, "Oh, no, we can't do that so fast." And I needed passport in like 1 or 2 days. He said, "Yeah, come back in a couple of weeks." I said, "Wait a second. I need it now. I can't wait for a couple of weeks. I need to go to American Embassy and travel back to America. I'm a student at American University." He said, "Well, there's nothing I can do for you." What a blow. I was so down, I didn't know what to do. I was afraid to miss school in America, in Maine. And my mom was very resourceful, and she started calling her friends. One of her friends said, "Look, don't worry, I'll help you." So he called back in a couple of hours, said, "Talk to right people." And he said, "Konstantin, now I want you to listen very carefully. I want you to do as I say. Tomorrow, go to a store, to this particular store, because I know that they sell real alcohol, not fake, not bad quality, okay, real stuff. buy 2 bottles of this vodka, buy a cognac, a bottle of cognac, buy a bottle of brandy, and something else. Take it in a plastic bag so no one can see it, and put something soft inside so it doesn't make clicking sound when you have lots of bottles in a plastic bag. They like tsing, so that no one knows that you have booze inside. And go and see this person at this police office, like city HQ. And I did exactly as he told me to do. I came to this guy and, I said, I'm from this person. So I know who you are. And he started asking me questions about America because everyone wanted to know how America was back in 97. And I was kind of nervous giving him the booze in a plastic bag, but it was so expected by him. He just grabbed it, said, "Did you get everything?" I said, yeah. I said, "Okay." And he put it in a safe, like he had an official safe for police documents. He put it there. And he said, "Come back in a couple hours." So I came back in a couple hours, and he gave me a passport. And he looked at me, a new passport, and he looked at me and said, "You know what? You're lucky. I wish I could leave Russia and go live in the West, in the United States or in Canada." I said, "I would like to live in Canada." He said, "It's like Russia. Same weather, same trees, same everything, same birch trees." But I remember he looked at me and there was such a sorrow in his eyes. And I still remember the words. He said, "But I'm a part of the system and I cannot leave." Imagine that. It made such an impression on me that I still remember, and it happened in 1997. But I remember him. So that was the case of the booze in a plastic bag. Another case. Back in 1995, when I was still going to Russian university, I received my driver's license. I attended school for 3 months. I studied theory for 3 months and learned how to drive. We had driving lessons. Then we all had to take a road test. And we came to this special place, and the government was conducting road tests. And there's a person came out, and he was not in official clothing or anything like that. And he kind of came to us, and he said, "Look, I'm willing to help you out, boys. You got to understand that I'm going to sell you insurance that you will pass the road test." And we all laughed. We were like, "Well, we started. We know how to drive." He looked at us. He goes, "Oh, okay, no problem." And then we started taking road tests. And most of us failed. And they started failing us. I remember I was very nervous, and I was driving, and the guy said, "Turn left." And I said, "I can't turn left here. It's against the rules." He said, "I said turn left," and I turned left. And then he looked at me and said, "Why did you turn left? It's against the rules. Didn't you see there are 2 lanes? You can't cross them. You don't know the rules. You don't know theory." And I was, "But you told me." He said, "Well, yes, I did." And then things like that happened to all of us. And most of us failed, okay? And we were just bummed out standing there. The very same guy showed up, looked at us, smiled, and said, "Well, so would you like to get your driver's licenses or not?" And we said, "Yes, we would like to do that." He said, "Well, then you're going to pay something." And he basically told us the price, and it wasn't much. It was like a few boxes of chocolate candies, things like that. And he said, "Why did you have to make it so difficult?" Well, I got my driver's license that day. And I did know how to drive. I did everything right, but they failed me. They failed me on purpose. Now it's much worse. Because some people back then actually did pass. And if I didn't fall for this guy telling me, he was an instructor, driving instructor, who was testing me after all. So had I known his behavior, I probably would go straight and I wouldn't make mistakes. And they would have to give me my driver's license. But now, a member of my family, a very close member, took 6 driving tests recently. I taught her how to drive myself. I, spent so much money. She's a good driver. But she failed every time. And she said that she was offered openly to pay. So, they wouldn't fail her. And she declined. And she wanted to prove that she could drive well. So I said, no, it's completely impossible without paying off. Another case. Well, many cases. Driving and traffic cops. Where do I even start? I love driving. I started driving in 95. I got my driver's license, and my parents bought a first car. It was old Soviet car Moskvich, very inexpensive, but it actually did drive. And I started driving it. I still love driving. I haven't driven in 2 years, and that's it. So I'm a very experienced driver. Basically drove every day for 20 plus years. No, almost 30 years. And in Russia, I drove a lot. In Moscow and Rostov, and anywhere in between, okay? There were quite a few stories. I will start with the 90s. In the 90s, cops had very few ways of earning money, and stopping drivers and extorting money was one of the ways, sure thing. They used to say, do not pay me salary, just give me a badge, a traffic police wand, and a place on the road. And that was true, that, they would stop you and they would just extort you. They would not let you go until you paid something. It was considered quite normal back then. Things changed, but not much. There are so many times that I was stopped. But I have to admit, I was stopped mostly for violations because I did violate things, nothing major. I never got into accidents. I never was reckless driver, but I did speed quite often. And a couple times I made wrong turns. And one time I did an illegal passover. I forgot this word. Anyway, I turned on the left, on the opposite lane, on the opposite way, and I sped up and I went forward. And then I got back. So this is an illegal, I think it's called a passover. Anyway, and I was caught quite a few times. And the policemen, I can't say that they extorted money from me, but they always made me understand that they were ready to let me go if I was being nice for them, if I was nice to them. And I was nice to them quite a few times. Couple times the policeman wrote me actually fines that I paid, but it didn't happen often. Now, it's much more difficult for police to accept bribes for traffic cops because they have cameras everywhere and so forth. They have, that everything is being recorded in their cars. They still find ways, but it used to be so much easier. Okay. Another case. My father was blackmailed by a conscription commissar. I was in America. I was 20 years old, and it was time for me to serve in the army. Well, you really have to serve once you turn 18. I'm very nearsighted, and I officially got a way out, a ticket out of army, okay? Because, you know, they don't take people with vision like mine to the army. But then, all of a sudden, and I was in America, all of a sudden there was a telephone call, and a conscription commissar called my father, and he said, look, your son, I gotta talk to you about your son. Why don't you see me in the office? My father came to the office, and the commissar basically blackmailed. He said, look, I can cause lots of troubles for your son, or for a fee, I can take his dossier, his case, and put it far, far back when no one would even be looking. So my father came home and talked to mom, and they decided to play it safe. So $100 put my dossier to where no one saw it anymore. Well, I guess until recently, because they're changing everything and digitizing it and having a completely different system. Okay, so it was a blackmail, and my parents could have called, you know, police and KGB, and the guy would be arrested, but they didn't want to do that. He was arrested, and he was sentenced he was caught red-handed accepting bribe. Okay. That was another case. Now, the case of the red lines. Well, that's a good one. Red lines, how red lines become black lines. You know, in Russia, every property, every piece of real estate, every building, apartment, house, you know, anything, has a blueprint. It's called the technical passport. It's basically description and a drawing of property. And in Russia, you know, there are lots of apartment blocks. And if you imagine, close your eyes and imagine an apartment block, let's say 9 stories high. And every story has a few apartments. Every floor has a few apartments. And there are walls that cannot be tampered with. They cannot be knocked down in the apartment. They cannot be cut. You cannot cut door or window through them, because they hold all the pressure of the apartment. So there are some walls that can be tampered with, and there are some that can't. And if you tamper with something that you're not supposed, according to the building code, you know, once you sell the apartment, an inspector comes in and checks. And then when he sees that something was done, it's what not supposed to be done, it was done illegally, he puts red lines into the passport, technical passport of the property. And you just cannot sell it further. Okay, you can sell it once, but whoever buys this apartment or building or house from you, they won't be able to sell it. They wouldn't be able to sell it because this is it. The red lines stop the sale. You have to fix it. So the red lines become black lines. So I bought an apartment and I added a walk-in closet. So put a few I ordered, of course. I didn't do it myself, but I ordered. So a person came and basically he divided a room into 2 parts. He put up frame structure, and he put sheetrock on top of it. So it's like a wall, okay, with a door. It did not violate the structure of my apartment. It basically didn't do anything. It just modified my room. It added me a closet. So I was selling the apartment. Inspector came in, and he saw that this sort of fake wall, and he said, well, it's not supposed to be here. Told him, look, this is just a walk-in closet. This is sheetrock. And said, no. And he gave me a million reasons why I violated the code, and my violation was very serious, you know. I felt like I was criminal, and I would go to the Hague court as war criminal, okay? He made me feel not scared, but pretty unsettled. And I looked at him and said, you know what? You convinced me. I'm going to knock this wall down. And the guy did not expect the inspector did not expect me to say that. He said, dumbfounded, why would you do that? I said, what do you mean? You just told me it's illegal. He said, well, we can make the red lines black lines for a fee. I said, well, for what fee? And he, said, well, they never give you exact amount because when caught, if caught, they try to get themselves out of trouble. So he said, well, this is the common rate on the market, and I can recommend you people who would advise you. And anyway, so it all came down to an amount. It wasn't, nothing major. And let's put it this way. He became favorable to me. And then he said, well, you're fine. And he gave me explanation from the code where my construction, my wall, did not violate the code. I said, look, just 30 minutes ago, you were telling me all these things about how I violated the code by building up this wall. He said, no. I made a mistake. You're fine. And he showed me where the code says that if a wall like mine is constructed inside a room, then, that's okay. So the red lines became the black lines. Construction was justified and legalized very easily. Okay. Now, the case of Верхний Lars. Oh, that's a good one. One day back in 2014, in November, I took my family in Rostov. We were living in Rostov at the time, and we drove all the way to Georgia, the country. And it's a fairly easy drive, but it's a very long drive. It takes 12 hours from the city of Rostov-on-Don to get to the border. And the border is called the border patrol point is called Верхний Lars. Okay. By the way, Верхний Lars you most likely have seen because there were pictures of it all over the world when Russian men were fleeing the mobilization. They were huge lines and a bunch of reporters. And this is one of the few places in Russia where you actually could walk into another country, to Georgia. And Georgia has been a safe haven for Russians. So anyway, back then, of course, there was no line. We drove almost to Верхний Lars, and that is the province of Ossetia, Северная Ossetia. And before going there, I learned some information from friends that to be very careful on the roads because cops in Северная Ossetia are incredibly tough and they try to frame you. They try to extort money from you, and sometimes they even frame so bad they can open a legal case against you. For example, they start searching your car, and while you look the other way, all of a sudden they find like a little package, small plastic bag with illegal stuff. So the cops there are pretty darn bad. And so I was driving those big mountains, this mountainous road. It was midnight. I was with Natasha, friend of hers, and a girlfriend of hers, and Oля. Dasha stayed home. And we were driving, and I was exhausted, and I was getting close to Верхний Lars, and I was very careful. And all of a sudden, I was driving, and it was a very smooth curve of a road, and all of a sudden I saw a patrol car in front of me to the right on the side of the road. And I made sure I was driving within the rules. I was not speeding. I was, just like very carefully driving. And all of a sudden I passed and the cars, turned on the lights and pulled me over. And I knew that they were going to do something to me. I knew because, that was the place. Before Верхний Lars, before Georgia. If you ever get there, watch out, okay? The same guys are probably still there waiting for innocent drivers. So they look at me, they come to my car, two guys, they look at me and they see I have a small child and two women in the car. And they say, well, you know what? You better come with us because oh boy, you just violated, you broke the rules so much. I said, what did I do? He said, you were driving on the wrong way, on the wrong side of the road. And we have video footage to prove it. And I started laughing because I wasn't driving. I was driving on my side of the road, and they claimed that somehow I, took left and I was driving the opposite way of the road, okay? So I kind of started laughing because I was prepared for what was coming. So I came to their car, and they said, we have evidence. It's video evidence. We have, it's in Russia called dashcam, video registrator. I said, fellas, if I broke the rule, then I'm going to pay the price. I know quite well what the price is. That is a fine of 5,000 rubles. Back then it was $150, and I lose my license for 6 months. I know it's a very serious violation. And they played along. They said, oh, yes, we're glad you know that. I said, I know. I said, I need the evidence. They looked at each other, and there were two men in the car. They looked at each other, and they said, no, one was at the driver's seat, and another one was right next to me on the other side, kind of blocking my way out. And they set me in the passenger seat. And they looked at me, and they said, look, don't you trust our word? And I said, no. I said, okay. They said, well, we have evidence inside the glove compartment. And I said, well, okay, fine. They said, but the thing is, it's on the flash card, memory card. I said, look, you are in luck because I have a computer with me in my car I'm bringing to Georgia, and it has a slot for the flash card. And I said, well, it's a different kind. It's not going to fit. I said, well, they're all the same, universal. Let's try it. Let's just try. And they puzzled. And they go, okay. Oh, the glove compartment is locked. I said, well, let's unlock it. We don't have the key. Our captain has the key. And captain is 40 miles away in the city of Vladikavkaz. I said, well, it's not a problem. Let's call the captain, and we'll wait until he shows up here. And, we'll wait. Fine. I've been driving for 12 hours. I'm tired. I'm going to sleep here. I'm going to take a chill, and, I'll wait. And they were dumbfounded. They said, okay. But you know what? The captain is not available right now. You can't reach him because it's night. I said, well, let's wait until the morning. Let's go to, if you can't unlock your glove compartment and get the evidence that I was violating the driving rule, then, let's go to Vladikavkaz, to your headquarters. I'm sure you will be able to unlock it. They said, look, why don't you pay a fine right now? Okay, why are you being so difficult? I said, fellas, I hope that you understand what's going to happen now. I am ready to pay the fine. I'm ready to take a fine from you. You have to write me up this document. It's called the fine, official fine. And because I live in Rostov and you're in Vladikavkaz, you have to include the evidence, which is you have to transfer it from the flash card into a CD disk. And you must create this special package and send it to the cops in Rostov. And if you find me right now, and the evidence will show that, I really did violate the traffic rule, then I will lose my license. The judge will rule out in your favor, in the police favor, and I will pay the price. But if you write me a fine and you will not include the evidence, it means that you just committed a crime, and you will be criminally tried, and there will be investigation against you. And I'll make sure, because I have means in Rostov, I will make sure that the cops in Rostov will go after you. And you will get fired and you'll go to prison. But that's not going to happen because you have the evidence, right? So the cops looked at each other. And the guy who was standing right next to me outside of the car, he looked at his partner and he started screaming. He said, "What are you doing? Why are you giving hard time to this man? Don't you see he's a good guy? He is a family man. He has a family. What are you doing? What, you crazy? Let him go. Let the guy go. Here is your driver's license. Please, friend, go. I'm going to take care of this. My partner's no good bum, That was such a show. It was absolutely fantastic. So I still remember this Verkhny Lars case. It was just, this is insane. Another driving accident. I made a legal U-turn where I wasn't supposed to. That was my fault, okay? The previous case, the Verkhny Lars, they were extorting money for no good reason. But this case, I was going home, I was stuck in traffic, and basically I had to reach traffic light, and I had to make U-turn and go opposite direction. And then I had to wait for about 10 more minutes because the line was huge. And the road, the opposite way, was absolutely empty. Okay, so I made a U-turn before waiting for the traffic light, which is a serious violation in Russia. Again, I did that what the cops were telling I didn't do. Okay. No. How to say that? I did that time. In Verkhny Lars, cops were saying that I did it, and that I didn't. But this time in Moscow, I did it, right? So, and of course, my luck, all of a sudden, I didn't do it often. Just a couple times, that's it. My luck, cops behind me, they saw that, pulled me over immediately. And basically, they didn't really say anything. So, look, it's a bad violation. We're going to write you a fine. And then they started hinting. But, if you really are in a hurry and we're seeing that you drive a nice car and you're in a hurry, then we're also in a hurry. Something can be done. And I don't have any money on me. I said, well, fellas, I don't have any money. And they're like, oh my, okay, we're going to fine you and all of that. And all of a sudden, on the radio, someone calls them, and it's some very serious accident. They said, you got to be there in 10 minutes. And they looked at each other in disappointment, and they give me a driver's license back, said, go. We forgive you. We got to go. And I said, look, fellas, you didn't have to. I understand that I did make mistake. I did violate the traffic laws, and I would like you be nice to me. I'd like to do something nice to you. They said, well, you don't have to. I said, look, why don't I do that? Because that was my home area, so to speak, and I knew the cops. I drove there all the time, every single day, so I figured I'd be in a good terms with them. So I said, the thing is, I really don't have any cash on me, but I have my card, and if you stop by a local store, then I'll give you a couple bottles of vodka, one for you and one for your captain. And they said, well, only if you want to. We don't require you to do that. I said, no, it's my treat. Thank you. But the thing is, I said, look, there's a traffic jam. That's why I was trying to avoid it. So how do we go around it? I said, okay, go get into a car. So I get into the cruiser, and they just go like, against the flow, and they cut to the chase. They cut to the store very, very easily. Okay, I buy a couple bottles of vodka, and I give it to them. I said, one for the captain, one for you. So they take me to my car, take me back, and I go. That's the vodka case. It wasn't a bribe, because they did not blackmail, they did not extort anything from me. It was just thank you. So what else? What's next? I was stopped numerous times for speeding. When I was younger, I did speed. I don't speed any longer. I'm wiser now, and I don't break any rules anymore. But hey, it was a long process of learning things. Thank goodness I never got into an accident. I didn't harm anyone. No one harmed me. But my crime was speeding. I'd say, over 30 years, I've been stopped, I don't know, dozen of times, couple dozen perhaps, something like that. So, and most of times, I got a few official fines, but most of times cops let me go. Another case of corruption, I call it the sticker case. Stickers, buying stickers, car stickers. In the United States, you go to a local garage and you expect a local mechanic to inspect your car and give you, if it's normal, if it runs well, and it's according to all the standards, they give you a sticker. They put it on your windshield. In Russia, there are also stickers, but it's like a little card, like registration, as far as I remember. And you also go to garage, it's the same procedure, and you get inspected, and if everything is fine, then they give you sticker. So I remember that it was a very common practice. At some point, they gave insurance companies right to issue stickers. And insurance companies used that right. They sold stickers. Well, it was their responsibility. I can't say that it's a bad corruption, but they sold stickers. They never inspected cars. And it saved a lot of time, but it was their responsibility. So I bought stickers. Well, they sold it to me along with insurance policy every year. So I would renew it and I would get new sticker for years. And all people I know did the same thing. It was morally acceptable in Russia. My car was absolutely fine. I drove nice German cars. First, it was Audi A6. It was always in perfect condition. And then I bought Mercedes, an E-Class, and it was also perfect condition. So I didn't have any problem with buying stickers because it was in perfect shape. I knew that. And I maintained my cars like they were brand new always. But other people were buying stickers from insurance companies. The sticker case. And then the last thing about my personal experience is hospital. How the hospital cases, because there were quite a few. I went to hospitals twice in my life. After I came back to the United States, I got to Russia back in 2004. I got real bad food poisoning. And it was bad. They didn't even diagnose me back then. But I remember I was in a hospital in a ward, and no one was paying attention to me for a day. Doctors were just walking by, and the nurses as well. And I called my friend, my old wise friend from Russia, and I told him, I said, look, what's going on? I feel like they're ignoring me. And he told me, did you pay them? I said, why would I have to pay them? I'm in a hospital. I said, well, you don't know how things work in Russia. I said, next time a doctor passes by, call them and tell them that after they treat you and you heal, you will be very thankful to him. And this is exactly what I did. And as soon as the password, as soon as I said that, the doctor started running around me, doing the blood work, doing all the tests, and so forth. And then the same thing happened to nurse. My friend said, look, do you have any cash on me? Which I didn't. He said, I'm going to send a driver and some cash and small bills. Every time a nurse comes to you and administers a shot, give her $1. And, you will get much better service. Just like he said, As soon as I started giving nurses $1 per IV per shot, oh, they were started paying attention to me. Anyway, I spent 2 weeks in the hospital. I got healed, but they didn't diagnose me. And I paid, I promised, that I would be very thankful, and I was. I paid the doctor, I don't remember, 30 or 40 bucks, something like that, and he was happy. Nurses were happy too. The very same thing happened 8 years later. I got appendicitis and I got into hospital. I spent 2 weeks there again. And every time, and I told the doctor right away, I said, I'll be very thankful if you treat me well. And the doctor did. And the nurses did also. And I delivered my promise. Let's put it this way. In Russia, medical insurance, if you get to a hospital, it's free. You don't have to pay anything, as long as you're a Russian citizen and you have medical insurance. But everyone does it. But in order to get good service, you got to be thankful to doctors, because their salaries are very small, minuscule, and they want to live good. And this is corruption. It is a crime considered by the Russian criminal code. I do not think it's a crime. I'm happy to pay for services that a person tries to do something good for me. Now, I have another blog. It's becoming a very long stream, but I have another blog of news. It's been from my personal life so far, and I want to tell you from my work life and from what the stories that I've heard at the workplace. And that's also interesting. Before I do that, I'd like to remind you that every single day I select and make 9 news available that come from Russia that I find important, that I comment and analyze. I make them available to patrons of Inside Russia at patreon.com. If you follow the news I post, then you will be up on top of things about Russia. Okay, so if you wanted to know things about Russia but didn't know where to ask, look no further. Patreon, become patron of Inside Russia at patreon.com, and you will know everything you need to know about today's Russia. So, quite a few cases of corruption. Let's put it this way. That's more serious stuff. I did not witness it. I have heard of them from some sources. Let's start with a case of, I call it the case of Brazil trip. There was a large contract once upon a time. The contract for construction of an infrastructure facility. And it was financed by one of the ministries of Russian Federation. And one company was participating in a bidding process. And the bidding back then, it wasn't like right now. It was just beginning of the creating of the process of bidding procedures and things like that. There were no computers, there were no official rules, and everything was up to certain bureaucrats, certain officials. And one company was placed a very good bid, very competitive bid, and everything was pretty much decided. The official at the last minute came and said, look, you need my approval. I am going to give you my approval, but only if you send me to inspect one of the plants in Brazil. And the company equipment who we were some other company was delivering, was located, there were a few plants all over the world. One in France, one in Turkey, one in Brazil, and I think one in the United States. It was electrotechnical equipment. And I said, why Brazil? We can send you to, say, France. That's much, much easier, much closer. He said, no, 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 no. You don't understand. There's a carnival going on in Brazil right now. And I go inspect the plant real quick, or don't inspect it at all, but I'll be nearby somewhere. But it just happens to be that there's a carnival, and the inspection will be for a week or so, and I will have to bring my family with me. So, I guess that official, from what I heard, he traveled to Brazil, and he was perfectly satisfied. And he saw the carnival, and most likely, or he inspected the plant, or perhaps not. So another case I heard of was a case of $12 million. There was a large not power plant, but it was a long time ago, before power plants were even constructed. There was an industrial facility funded by one of the government branches in one of the provinces far away in Russia. And that province was controlled by people, not controlled by Moscow. It was by certain people, there. And a certain company was invited to participate. It was like a long time ago, 2004, 2003, was invited to participate in... there weren't even bidding procedures back then. There was a deal made, said, build us this thing. Okay. But this is going to cost you such and such. Said, okay, add $12 million on top of that. And bring the money in cash to us. And I heard that $12 million fits in the briefcase, okay, in parts. Again, it didn't happen to us, but it's a fairly known story. It was a fairly known story back then in the market, that $12 million went to certain people. That's huge case of corruption. The case of foreign company selling equipment in Ukraine and sending some Moldovan Moldovan people to college in the West. It didn't happen in Russia. It happened in Ukraine. Again, it didn't happen to us. I've heard about it. That's a story, kind of like an urban legend. One Western company was selling electrotechnical equipment in Ukraine, and it was selling it successfully. It was one large contract, and an official also wanted to give his seal of approval, but he didn't ask to be sent for an inspection to Brazil. Instead, he said, look, why don't you go to Moldova, which is a nearby country, the bordering Ukraine, drive to Moldova and finance, and I'll tell you whose basically child to go to college in the West. They need money, and you'll do us a good thing if you do that. So from what I understand, the equipment was sold and someone went to study in one of the Western countries. Another story is the case of Thailand, I call it. A friend of mine was working in Russia. He's no longer in Russia anymore, but he was educated in the United States. He's originally from the USSR, and he was one of the executives in a large Western company that manufactures drugs, pharma. He was telling me stories how they were motivating. They called it motivational events. They're motivating doctors in Russia. They couldn't bribe doctors. They couldn't pay them money. It was against their policy because they're a Western company, and they, very proud. They were very proud of having clean hands, and they were showing every compliance and all of that. But every so often, they would get Russian doctors together and they would send them to Thailand for a medical conference. They would rent a space in a large 5-star hotel with large conference center, and they did stage conference events. They would invite very famous professors of medical science, and the professors would read lectures. But the thing is, they would do it for 1 or 2 hours a day, okay? And the rest of time, those doctors would have to themselves. And for work, they would need things like iPads, telephones, new iPhones, some kind of technical stuff, earphones. It's all, needed for work, if you know what I mean. And I think that the pharma companies in Russia are still doing that. And this is how they're working with doctors. Organizing events, organizing trips, organizing educational classes, improving, building up qualification of doctors and so forth. The case of a power plant. I heard of one company built a power plant, turnkey, and the customer did not pay. Usually it goes like this. When you build a power plant, it's a huge contract. It's hundreds of millions of dollars. And the contract is divided into a billion of different stages. First, you have to design, then you have to construct, then you have to, procure equipment, really, because it takes a long time. Order everything at plants, do the down payments. Then as plants produce, you have to pay them more. Then you have to start construction, earthworks at first, and then foundation, then build up facilities. Then once the construction part is done, equipment comes, you have to install it, then you have to fine tune it, commence it. It's a huge project. And then you get paid by parts. For example, down payment, the customer pays you 30%, so you place orders at usually the Western companies, the manufacturers of turbines, transformers, and so forth. Then they pay you as long as you go along the construction works. For example, you finish foundation earthworks, they pay you for that. You finish foundation, they pay you for that, and so forth. But they pay you everything less 10%. 10% is called the guarantee. I forgot. Anyway, it's like insurance that you build everything right, and when you turn the power plant on, and it works, and then they sign all the papers. You commence the power plant. They pay you 10%, and 10% of $200 million is $20 million. So I heard of one company was not paid. It did everything perfectly well. It built a power plant according to what the customer wanted, according to the technical assignment. But the customer simply did not pay 10% because the customer could, as it turned out. And the general contractor took the customer to court. The court looked at the case and ruled into favor of the general contractor because it's a no-brainer. Then there was the next stage. The Russian courts, if you sue someone, you go through 3 stages: first, second, and third. The second stage, it's supervisory stage. They make sure that the first stage did not make any mistakes. Okay, so the second stage, the higher court ruled into the favor of general contractor because it was a no-brainer again. And then there was the third stage. In the third stage, usually, the court, even higher court, looks if there were any mistakes in the process made, in the process of, court, of the law. And the third stage was also won by the general contractor because, hey, there's a power plant, there's a contract, there's a power plant, and it's working and everything is fine, you gotta pay, right? So the third stage, the third court also ruled into the favor of the general contractor. And then there's a possibly, usually it stops right there if you sue someone, okay? Because if you have the court order, then you have certain people who work for the court, they go and arrest bank account. And then the money is extracted forcefully from that organization, from that company that lost the case, right? But the client took it to the Supreme Court. And it turned out, and the Supreme Court, guess what? Ruled in favor of the customer. Because as it turned out, the guy who owned the company, the client, who ordered the power plant, okay, he was very good friends with one of the judges in the Supreme Court. So the company that built power plant lost the case in the Supreme Court, and you cannot appeal that, okay? So the first stage is regular court, second is appeal, and third is supervisory, I think. So there was a final decision, and the client, as the company learned afterwards, as the general contractor learned afterwards, the client was bragging. He said, I wasn't going to pay them right from the beginning. I knew I wasn't going to pay them. Why? Because I can. Because I have friends in high places. And that is very sad. The company went bankrupt because, $20 million is a lot of money. A lot of subcontractors went bankrupt because of that. But one guy saved $20 million because he could, because he had friends in high places. So that is also a very known story in the market where our company was working. Didn't happen to us, if you know what I mean. Friends, I think this is it. It's been a very long stream. My life, I told you personal cases from how I saw corruption. Did I break any laws? Did I buy my way out of things? I'm just say that the only laws I broke were driving violations, speeding and making turns a couple times at the wrong places, okay? And that's pretty much it. When I was younger, I was much more reckless driver than I am now. But I guess it's life is a journey. It's, and I've definitely gone through my journey. Would I do that now? Probably not. But hey, you live, you learn. Does corruption still exist in Russia? Not only it still exists, but it's intensifying because all those people who are in the position of power, in the vertical of power, they understand that now their future is not certain. They understand that their jobs might be terminated in the future. They understand that Putin gotta go sooner or later. They understand that along with Putin, they might go. Therefore, they're trying to enrich themselves like there's no tomorrow. So corruption right now is like a wildfire consuming Russia. And boy, it's been an hour and a half stream. Thank you for staying with me. I would like to turn the live stream chat on now just for a few minutes because it's been pretty long already. Before I do that, I would like to tell you that I'm not going to live stream tomorrow. I'm having some things I need to finish with a Bell's palsy and a couple other things with my therapy. Most likely, I will not stream on Friday. Saturdays for patrons and for members of Buy Me Coffee, it's still under question. I will try my best, but if I miss, please don't get upset too much. I have very important couple days coming up, and most likely I will not stream on Sunday. So I will see you all on Monday, perhaps on Saturday, patrons and members of Buy Me Coffee. This is the last thing I need to do with my therapy, including my therapy, couple other things, and next week will be 7 days. So, what do you think of what I just told you? Did you find the stories interesting? Let me know down in the comments. Live stream. By the way, let me know which story you like the most. Out of all stories, my grandfather, that's a tragic. That those KGB officers, four of them, they influenced all his life. And then what I personally saw was the guy was taking vodka from me, and he looked at me with sadness in his eyes, and he said, "You're lucky. You're lucky. I would love to get out of Russia too, but I can't. I'm a part of the system." He was colonel, I think, back in '97. I still remember looking sad. He had a big office, and he was pretty important guy in Rostov. Retired now, probably not even alive because it was a long time. He was in his 50s back then, and he was pretty powerful. But at that point, I learned so much about power. He looked at me and he said, I would love to leave, but I can't. I'm part of the system. At that point, I realized that if you're part of the system at any level, you are on the leash. And your leash can be long, your leash can be always invisible, but it's there. It's always there. And then just one click and boom, they get you on the leash. Ooh. So friends, what do you think? It's very odd, very unusual stream. Can't say odd, but unusual. Unusual. So, Lorna, Bob, Mommy, Amir, Harry, Dirk, thank you for coming. Those who are not here, you are in our hearts. We remember you. Thank you so much. And friends, the usual suspects, thank you for coming. You know the usual. Please put your messages in caps, put inside Russia after @ and thank you for coming. So what do you think? Which story did you like the most? Thank you, Jules Rames. Shareleaf, howdy. I'm just going to be reading those questions and comments in caps and, orange highlighted in orange boxes. Keith from Hawaii, howdy. Royal Oak. That's 1 hour 35 minutes. Let's do about 10 minutes and then we'll be done. Lucas, thank you for the stream. All your corruption stories very familiar. More like traditional for some people. Okay, thank you. Terry, I miss driving tremendously. I love driving. That's one of those things that I didn't have. We didn't have cars in the USSR. Car was not even a luxury. Car was like, to us, is like a yacht for you, a large yacht for you, you know. I started driving in 95. My first car was my parents' car, it was Moskvich. I bought Pontiac Sunbird, very old junky car in the United States. It cost me $400, and I've enjoyed driving ever since. But last 2 years, I miss it a lot. Like the story where you forced the police to back off. Oh, that was classic. I was so tired, and I was so sure that I was right, and I was so sure that they were not gonna do anything to me. Then I was just trolling them. And I loved the moment that the guy started screaming at his partner, "Don't you see he's all right? Don't you see he's a great guy? Why are you giving him such hard time, you know? Just let him go, come on." I was laughing all along. I got into Georgia. No corruption in Georgia back then. You know, the cops are helpful. The cops were paid nicely. The cops were just the way the cops should be. And it just a few meters, and it's such a difference. Koshkin Dom, just Jimmy, howdy. The Georgian police story was great. So, listen, there's a continuation. The Georgian police, okay? For 12 hours, I drive to the border. Then I get to Georgia, and it's a mountain pass road. It's another couple hours. 14 hours of driving, insane. I'm so tired. I'm like on my fourth coffee. I get to Tbilisi, and I cannot find my hotel because Georgian language is not like Cyrillic or not like Latin. It's the very odd words, okay, and letters, and I just cannot read them. And I drive around in Tbilisi, and I violate some rule, minor, very minor. And the cop, a Georgian cop, patrol car, stops me. And he looks at me and goes, "You're from Russia, right?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, what are you doing?" I told him, "I'm looking for this hotel." He said, "Don't worry about your violation. It's not a big deal. Follow me." And the cop took me to the hotel. And I literally was falling asleep at the end. Okay, that's the difference between Russian cops and Georgian cops. I'm a citizen of Russia, okay? They were trying to frame me and extort me and to cheat me out of my money. My cops. I get to Georgia. I'm not Georgian citizen. They help me. Phew. Elsha, thank you so much. I hope it was worth it. It's a very long stream for me to make too. Bob, I remember you showing us where you did the U-turn. Sherleaf, Konstantin, do you have any memories of or any memorable experience where people who refused to pay bribes wound up no longer living? I know what happens a lot, but any cases that stick out? Wound up they killed them for not. No. I don't know the cases like that. Some people went to prison, but it was big bribe. It was, serious stuff. Okay, it's not like your road violation or hospital. You're not pay someone off or whatever. It's nothing like that. So no. Pulaski, Virginia. Terry Carter. Howdy. Serge, sorry for my lame comments, but I tried to look with optimism to the future. I hope for a better future as a private pilot. Hope to visit Ukraine and Russia by plane as friends. Thank you so much, friend. This is actually a very important stream for me, not because of the stories, but because I was trying to get down to the reason why Russians are corrupt, why Russians they act the way they act. Why? Because what is happening right now in Ukraine, what is happening with Russia right now, Putin has usurped all the power, and his friends and the Russian citizens have allowed that. That takes roots in the past. In order to understand now and how to deal with it and what to do next, we have to know the past. Great Southern Land, my babcha kept her family alive, including my father, during World War II by bribing Russian officials with homemade moonshine. I believe that story, yes. My grandmother had vodka, 6 or 7 bottles, underneath bed. I still remember that. I was a kid. I was underneath, like, I was crawling underneath bed and I saw vodka. She kept it as currency. It was early 80s, 1979, 1980. So I believe that. Dale, I had a similar situation when I took my driving test. When the testing officer asked me to turn left on the one-way street, I continued straight instead. Well, they were testing you for your knowledge of, like, of traffic rules and how driving is done, but they were trying to fail us. We had very little chance. The guy started screaming, "Take a left! I told you take a left right now." So I took a left. I think Mr. K could cosplay to every cop that he blocks to the mafia. I had a couple interesting situations with cops. I'll tell you in a private live stream on Saturday. Remind me, please. I like the Syria police story the best. It's one of the best stories, yes. Is corruption bad in Uzbekistan? Terry, I'm not discussing Uzbekistan. I'm very glad they've accepted me. They have a fair share of the problems, but I'll talk about Uzbekistan when I'm out. Hell Porter, thank you. Royal Oak, thank you. Leitmotif, I drive both. Yes, stick and automatic. My first cars were always stick, and my later cars were automatic. But I can definitely. I learned how to drive in the first place by driving stick. There was no automatic back then. John Wakamatsu, wow, long time no see. Howdy, friend. Missed you in the streams from Los Angeles. Thank you for coming. Sender, the unusual Russian, but what if it's the usual Russian? It's hard to imagine that you are not corrupt too. By the way, nice stories. I paid off cops. Guilty as charged. Is it corruption? Probably yes. Am I proud of it? Not really, but you know what? I don't still think it's not really a big deal. I never harmed anyone. I never paid my way out of bad accidents when someone was harmed, and Russians do that all the time. So, am I an unusual Russian? I think so. Barnabas Wannabe, long time no see. Sun in California is in the house. Good to see you. My wife is a Russian speaking Latvian, tells me about all the corruption in the USSR. I take it things didn't improve in Russia. They got worse. Because in the USSR, officials were afraid if they were caught, they were put in prison. In Russia, if you're caught, the worst thing can happen is they fire you. The only way you get into prison when you cross pathway of someone from your own agency. Okay, you're higher up, someone wants to get rid of you, put his body in your place and things like that. So it's always spiders in a jar. Thank you so much, Terry. Father's Taylor. The Taylor was my grandfather. Sam, rumors are that Putin's face scared the heck out of Gollum from Lord of the Rings. That's funny. Yeah, please, no political bashing. I mean, Andrew Hodson from South Africa. Uh, I have bought lunch for the traffic cops more than once after being requested to do so. In Moscow, I was stopped once. It was a very minor violation. I forgot my registration and papers, my driver's license. It is a violation, okay? They can seize your car until you go home and get it, and they fine you. And what's the big deal? I have a driver's license. It's registered. They look it up in a database, but I don't have it in paper. So it's a big fine. It's like, such and such money. I said, well, I don't have it. Well, do you have a credit card? I said, yes, I do. I said, okay. Go and, debit card, bank card. Go and withdraw the money. We'll wait. So they took the not documents, but they took something as a collateral. And they let me go when I was driving in Moscow at night. I found a ATM machine. I withdrew money. I came back and I claimed my collateral and I went on my way, That happened too once. Do Russian people know about the doping scandal? Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Most think it's unfair. It was fabricated by the West, and it's an attack on Russia. Yes, Georgian people are awesome. Love them. All right, friends. Sherleaf, thank you so much. Thank you. Remind me to tell the story of the cars, my personal story of my cars on Saturday for when I do private live stream for patrons. Friends, again, no live stream tomorrow. Circumstances, I gotta finish some things up about my therapy, and there are other couple things. Friday, I might try to release a short video if I can, but again, I'm gonna be very, very busy. Saturday, I will try my best. If not, then I'll make it up to you somehow. And on Sunday, I'll be traveling, so I'm not going to be able to do live stream. So from Monday and on, that's going to be 7 days every week. So thank you so much. I would like to pray real quick. I would like to, I'd be honored if you pray with me. Please join me. Let's do it. Thank you. Dear Lord Jesus Christ, thank you so much for everything that you have given us. Thank you for our families who love us, who we love. Thank you for the food on our tables, the roofs over our heads. Thank you for our children. Please give us wisdom to raise the children that they will be good people when they grow up. Please help Ukraine, stop the bloodshed, help Ukrainians, answer their prayers, and make their wishes come true. Please help Russia. Assemble your strongest angels with sharpest swords and knives, led by Saint Michael. Send them your heavenly army down to this earth, like avalanche, to get rid of the demons who have hijacked Russia, who we know by their names and by their faces. Please send your angels to help good Russians run their country so it becomes peaceful, loving, and respecting. Please help everyone who is in need of your help. Traveling, send them safe travels. In trouble, send them safety. Please help all single mothers and fathers who are struggling raising their children, trying to make ends meet. Please help everyone who is in need, depressed, lonely, betrayed, abandoned, sick, addicted, homeless, jobless, losing faith. Help everyone in need. Show them that you still love them, you're still right next to them, you still watch every step, and you're still with them. Thank you for allowing us to pray, come together as this community, and thank you for everyone who is praying along with me right now or simply watching us pray. Answer everyone's prayer and make everyone's wish come true. Dear Lord, I would like to mention a few people who need your help. They are Ann Larson and daughter Hannah, Jeffrey and his family, Alex, Mark, Tom W., J.R. McKim, Gabin with Gary, Lisa, Harry, Terry, John, Linda, Paula, Dennis, Jason, Susie, Tim, Dory, Rhonda, John, Taylor, Wayne, Dave, Don, Darla, George, Pamela, Meta, David, Randolph, Grace, Life, Dean, Elena, Natasha, Michael, Jake, Oля, Dasha, Sky, Svetlana, Sergey, Liz, Ron, Liz, Koshkin Dom, Sandra, Mike, Pathra, Joseph, Melissa, Jodes, Greg, Millie, Philip, Eileen. Thank you so much, dear Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. Thank you, friends. I would like to thank you for sticking with me for a very long stream. It's been a pleasure. I will see you soon. You are awesome and you rock. Before I sign off, I would like to ask you again to say, as usual, the usual along with me as loud as you can, and that is Carthago delenda est.